Is artificial intelligence the next big leap in truck driver recruiting and retention technology? Communicating with drivers on the road has come a long way since the days of payphones, but it looks like AI will help take it even further. I'm Deborah Lockridge with Heavy Duty Trucking, and today on this episode of HDT Leadership Insights, we're going to talk about how trucking companies can use some of the latest technology to help communicate with and retain their drivers and improve the fleet's efficiency at the same time. This Leadership Insights episode is produced in partnership with and sponsored by Tenstreet, and I'm talking to Tim Crawford, who is co-founder and CEO. Before we dig into our interview, remember to follow us on social media and subscribe so you don't miss an episode. So Tim, welcome to HDT Leadership Insights.
Thank you very much. Super excited to be here.
So just for a bit of context for our audience, if some of them aren't familiar with Tenstreet, just give us a brief description on what you do.
Yeah, we're a software company that connects carriers and drivers kind of across the life cycle from, pre-recruitment advertising through recruiting and onboarding, and post-hire safety management. So all the places where carriers and drivers come together, we try to build tools to make those interactions better.
And you've been doing this since what? It's almost 20 years now, isn't it?
Yeah, it's crazy. Since 2006. It's hard to believe.
So tell us a little bit about what you all are seeing in the driver market right now.
Yeah, what we're seeing in the driver market is a fair bit of caution from drivers as they are, doesn't feel like terribly optimistic about, where the good miles are. And so there's a lot of hesitation, a lot of drivers being really cautious about making a move and tending to stay where they are if the miles and pay are acceptable.
Yeah, so I know fleets are having to struggle with low rates and overcapacity, and I'm sure that affects the drivers and how many miles they're getting and what kind of pay. So,
absolutely.
So given that situation, what are some things carriers can do to help improve that utilization, improve their engagement with those drivers?
Yeah, I think what we're seeing is we're seeing more and more carriers seeing the light at the end of the tunnel, right? If sure you've read all the same sort of forecasts that we have,
right?
We may not be coming off the bottom, but the general consensus is where things aren't going to get much worse than they are today. And so people have sort of pivoted from, hey, how do I just keep the lights on? And how much further are things going to fall in terms of rates and volumes to, hey, as things get better, hey, what can we do now to be ready, the end of 24, the first of 25, when things really start to turn. So we're seeing people take a fresh look at, okay, what can we do to make our operations better? What can we do to make things smoother so that when that inevitable sort of cycle returns, they're not caught flat-footed. And that takes all different forms and flavors, but depending on individual carriers. But I think the general consensus is, yeah, we're moving in the right direction. No one knows how quickly, but things are moving that way.
Yeah, so it's definitely the sense I'm getting as well. So what are you seeing as far as mobile technology? Seems like every day I turn around, there's new announcements of all sorts of new technology. As far as, drivers in the cab and technology, how are those affecting the trucking and drivers?
Yeah, what we're seeing is, people are fully taking on board, hey, what can we do with all the technology that's just ubiquitous today in the driver's pocket, in cab, and how do we connect these islands of technology in a way that makes for a better experience for drivers, better outcomes for carriers, and connecting in ways that maybe weren't possible a few years ago, right? Because things weren't as ubiquitous, people weren't as comfortable with the technology. And so, one of the things we really are big believers in is this idea of interdependence. That if you can connect two islands of technology you not only make connections that weren't possible before, but you make both sides that you're connecting better than they would have been independently. And so, put another way, hey, having an onboarding system that's deeply integrated with a recruiting experience makes for a better experience for drivers. Hey, if you can have a navigation experience that's deeply connected to both your retention and your safety program, hey, you're going to end up with better outcomes, right? On both sides. And so that's really one of the things that we're really curious about, and we've been putting a lot of work into.
So, what are some of the things that you found? Are there problems that you feel like you can solve with this?
Yeah, I think so. And they come in all forms and flavors. And I really feel like we're just starting to scratch the surface on them. Let me give you a couple of examples. Hey, if a driver's at a way station for more than 20 minutes, probably means that there's something going on, right? The potential exists for there being a safety risk out there that you may not know is there as a carrier. Well, hey, if we can integrate a navigation experience with a safety workflow, now we can do things like notify safety in real time. Hey, there's something going on here. Um, and in an automated fashion, get that driver engaged around getting copies of inspection reports, um, you know, alerting safety that there is an inspection report, and really tying the two pieces together in a way that's interesting. And we can take that same geofencing technology, and we can also apply it around both driver retention and ultimately like shipper satisfaction. So things like, hey, when a driver ends up back at your home terminal, why not send that driver a video that says, hey, welcome back to the terminal. Hey, here's where the washer and dryer are. Here's the code to the Wi-Fi. Oh, and if you're having issues getting connected, tap here. In a way that just, not just here, there's a sign in the door, good luck, right? Good luck
Right.
finding the extra coffee filters if there's none ready in the back, right? Or hey, this shipper, this customer is really particular about, say, a no smoking rule. And
Mhm.
this is a vital customer for us. Hey, how do you remind that driver in the right context? Not, one line item in some of the shipping docks at the start of the trip, but right when as they're pulling into the dock, hey, a reminder, this is a really important thing, right? And that sense of connection we think enables things that just weren't really possible before or were hard to do. And it even extends to things like detention. Hey, if you're at that shipper more than X hours, um, why wait for the driver to get so frustrated that they're calling dispatch unhappy? Why
Right.
not why not automatically ping the driver and say, hey, it looks like you're detained. We're really sorry. Oh, here's a gift card for dinner on us when you do finally get out of there. And hey, if there's anything else we can do for you, tap here and make that human connection with the driver. We think this intersection between different parts of the business, as well as between technology and humans, enables things that are really, really interesting.
I could see where some people might be concerned. Would that be too easy to sort of take over some of the personal communication that's already happening?
Yeah, that's a really great point, and something that we're really, really focused on. Across the board, what we see in terms of both recruiting outcomes and safety outcomes, et cetera, a really key aspect of it, right? Both anecdotally and analytically, right? When you talk to people and when you look at the data, the more humans get involved, the better the outcomes are,
Right.
right? It's not and so what we're really focused on is how do you build not technology that's sort of on an island, but how do you build it in such a way that it furthers those human connections? Use the tech to do the routine. Hey, I'm going to provide the same rote data. So when humans have a conversation, it's about making human connections. Whether that connection is in a recruiting context, hey, why come drive for a given carrier? Or a safety context of, hey, tell me what's really going on here. Not, hey, we've got to dot all the I's and cross all the T's. How do you make that human connection?
Right.
Um, and do it in such a way that's super graceful. Like the metaphor we talk about a lot is we try to build our technology, especially our Gen AI stuff. like the metaphor we use is we want to be like an escalator. Because if you think about it, like escalators never really break. They just turn into stairs. And don't have something way off on the outside that just sort of sits out there and you're trying to pull one over on drivers. We're trying to be really upfront. Here's the tech and it's helping. And if the tech can't respond or if it's an exception, hey, you're in a context with a human conversation. Humans are always part of it, and making that personal connection, right? So that's a really, it's easier said than done. But we think it's really important to sort of get the most out of the tech in a way that is most impactful for both drivers and carriers.
So you're using generative AI?
We're dipping our toe in the water a little bit. One of the things we see, especially in a job search process, drivers have the issues that are most important to them, and there's different for every driver, but they tend to fall into like six, seven categories. And so we built some generative AI to give carriers the ability to respond to those standard questions, as well as if there's enough training material for the AI to learn from to answer questions kind of off hours or answer sort of the routine questions about things like, hey, how often am I going to get home? What are the pay rates I can expect? What is your pet policy? Right? Those sorts of things.
Sure.
Uh, and because if you think about the importance of human connection, a recruiter's not going to make a human connection with a driver around, here's our standard pay package, right? It's going to be the company line. Let the
Right.
AI do the road answers, and then let the recruiter do the exploration about what's most important to that driver as a human. That's where we think people are going to get the best outcomes. And we think there's a big job to be done from a generative AI perspective.
So, what should carriers think about if they're looking to implement new technology like this, messaging and navigation, or even any new type of technology?
Yeah, I think the important thing is to understand the evolution and don't kind of bite off more than you can chew, right?
Right.
We talk a lot about sort of crawl, walk, run, right? And we've spent a lot of time trying to figure out, okay, how do we sort of array the technology to support that evolution? Um, and if you look forward and you go, okay, hey, look, I think things are going to get better by the end of the year, right? I think the market is going to be more competitive for drivers. It's going to be more competitive in the freight market into 25. Hey, how do I position myself to succeed? Hey, it's that journey of 1,000 miles, single step, just start taking those first steps in that direction. And so start early, start gradually, and make sure that while you see the ultimate goal, you don't have to get there in one step, right? Adapt it at the rate that makes sense for each organization, and really move in an iterative fashion. We think is really important to really get the most value. When we see clients sort of swinging for the fences, you're going to strike out a lot. Um, and we're much bigger believers in, hey, to use a baseball analogy, just get on base, right?
Right.
Get on base, advance the runners, right? That's where you're gonna get the biggest results.
So, putting on your future prediction cap, what's on the horizon next for better connecting drivers and carriers?
Yeah, we think there's one of the interesting things to us about how carriers and drivers connect is that there's so many exceptions, right? Trucking is complicated,
Yes.
right? But it's not complicated and like put a man on the moon complicated. It's what I call like death by 1,000 cuts complicated, right? There's all these little things that can go wrong and do go wrong every day, right? And so the challenge from a technology perspective is, okay, how do you build something so that when those exceptions come up, you're not on an elevator that's stuck between floors. You're on an escalator climbing the stairs then, right?
Uh,
And how do you get things that are gracefully allow both the carriers and drivers to respond, right? Whether that's inevitable delays or problems with the truck, or oh wait, shipper challenges or scheduling challenges, or oh wait, I couldn't get a parking spot, and so I'm running out of hours. How do I react to that? And what does that mean ultimately from a safety and a retention perspective? We think is really cool, and stuff that we're really focused on. Okay, how do we make that better? And how do we anticipate the range of those exceptions in a way that they can get managed gracefully?
Well, a lot going on there. So, well, Tim, I think that's all we've got time for today, but thank you so much for sharing thoughts on the latest technology for driver recruiting, retention, efficiency that you've experienced at Tenstreet.
Absolutely my pleasure. It was great to talk with you.
Right, and thanks to our audience for tuning in, and don't forget to subscribe to HTT Talks Trucking on YouTube or your favorite podcast platform, where you'll also find leadership insights.